Well, welcome everyone. We're so excited that you could spend some time with us today. My name is Stacey Harris and I'm the Dean of Students here at William and Mary. And we're going to spend some time with the Dean of Students office today for families to chat with us and get to know a little bit more about what we do and the programs we run and the supports that we offer. And our favorite work are your students. So we're excited to spend some time with you. We're going to run about 45 minutes and we're going to chat informally and hope you can ask us some questions. I'd love to introduce some of our wonderful panelists that I get the privilege of working with every day. And we will start with Senior Associate Dean Dave Gilbert. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, what you love about this magical place, exciting changes ahead.
So yes, I am Dave Gilbert. I believe, in my 18th year at William & Mary. And I am the Director of Community Values and Restorative Practices, which formerly was known as Student Conduct. And we made an intentional change in our name to evince our new philosophy, which I'm happy to expound upon. And I also oversee and work with the Director of Student Accessibility Services and the Haven, which you'll hear a little bit more about from Dean Harris shortly. And what do I love about William & Mary? Almost everything, really. The students are top-notch. They're exciting. They're intelligent. They care about the world. They challenge us in really great ways. I'm constantly learning from them. And even in the difficult circumstances, I appreciate the privilege of working with them.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dave. And Jenny Call, Director of Care Support Services. You too. Tell us what you do, changes ahead, what you love.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Jenny Call. I've been in my role as Director of Care Support Services for, I just realized, 6 months now. So I am learning in this really exciting role of helping to support students. So Care Support Services works primarily with students who might be struggling in some area, whether it's with their own personal well-being, their interpersonal connections, their academic well-being. And we are working to connect them with resources to help support them. So we may be making referrals. We work with students in case management to help them identify their strengths and find their way to a successful journey through their time here at William & Mary. We're also just those point people to go to when students don't know quite who they need to talk to. We help connect students to the correct offices and also follow up on care reports, which are our ways of kind of understanding what some of the concerns may be in our community and reaching out to offer care and support. So anyone within our community, parents as well, can submit care reports. And we follow up on all of those to really make sure that students are getting the resources they need and that they're connected to actual people that can help them to identify their needs moving forward. Before I came into this role, I was also at William & Mary in a different capacity. So I've been here for a little over 2 years total. I worked as a wellness professional and health coach in health and wellness. So I love taking that perspective of helping students to identify their strengths, to overcome challenges and set goals, and really work on that with that one-on-one kind of relational basis. But the reason I love William & Mary and the reason that I'm here is that I started out as an undergrad here a number of years ago. So I really found my place here. I really found belonging within this community, was able to discover my strengths and skills in a new way, and also learn from the diversity of students here. So that was such a gift to me. And coming back as an adult and a professional, it's so great to be in this role, offering support in a way that wasn't completely available when I was a student and that I may not be aware of. So helping students to know that there is a support network here and that we are really here to support student well-being. It's a great opportunity to see that growth, to support students through their challenges and to help them identify how they can find their way to success.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jenny. How do I follow that? Oh, my goodness. So let me frame out a little bit about what the Dean of Students office does, because we have lots of different departments. I'm just going to read down so I don't forget any. We run parent and family programs. So everything from homecoming and connection ceremonies, not all of homecoming, just connections for families, family weekend, gifts for students during finals, all sorts of ways for families to stay connected. Student accessibility services, care support services that you just heard about, the Haven, which is really advocacy and support around domestic violence issues, CVRP, academic well-being, which you may have heard is now offering free tutoring for students. It's a wonderful office. Center for Student Diversity. And our newest office, which will just be starting next week, is an office that is focused on conflict resolution and peer mediation. It's separate from a conduct process. It's really about students helping each other through hard moments. I have been here almost a year, May 10th, and it's been a wonderful experience. I am jealous every time someone says they're an alum, because I went to a very small university in Massachusetts that was not nearly as beautiful. Don't tell them that I said that. And I love everything about this role. It's a dream job for me, and your students are really the best part of being here. We love our work. I would say that all of us together, we do a lot of things to help your students on their journey. So you help them to become employable, global citizens, help them celebrate, and also in bumpy moments. So we do a lot of crossover between our offices. So we're going to spend this time really talking about what we do, but also we're hoping you have questions to talk to us about. And where I'd like to start is asking each of you, what do you think are the best ways for our current students to find connection and belonging if they feel they haven't found their place, their humans, their people? And either one of you to just kind of jump in.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because that, I think it's a struggle coming post-pandemic, where a lot of our students were experiencing a good part of their academic journey, maybe virtually or in some kind of deviation from the norm. And so I do hear that from students now, who have gone through that period and are now thinking, okay, well, how do I get connected? It's really hard to do that. I think the great thing about this campus is there are so many ways to do that. I tell students, there are kind of low energy ways to do that, kind of that easy on-ramp. For example, here in the Sadler Center, our Student Center, we have recently expanded the building where a lot of the Dean of Students offices are, but there's also student spaces within that. We call it the Slice. There are events that happen. Our Center for Student Diversity is always hosting events that offer food. And so these kind of events, Student Accessibility Services did a carnival last week. These events are things that students can just drop into and explore and get connected with other students that they see or with the staff that they see. It's a good introduction to some of the things that are going on, and in a way that if it's not quite their fit, they can leave. There are a variety of clubs. I forget how many hundreds of clubs we have here in this,
Over
this
450.
Okay, over 450 in a relatively small school. So there's something for every interest group. We also have the Wellness Center, which is this fantastic resource on our campus that offers fitness classes, mindfulness, meditation, art therapy, most anything within the 8 dimensions of wellness. And students can explore that while they're taking care of themselves as well and connect with other students who have the same interest.
Yeah, one thing I love is they can just show up at our offices. So if they just want to not talk about something hard, but talk about what's happening in their lives or how to find connection, they really just need to find one of us, and we can help kind of connect them and brainstorm and get them to the right places. Dave, do you want to add to that? Because I have a different question for you if you're ready.
I do, because I have a personal reflection. I
Great.
have a freshman in college who is about 4 hours away for the first time in her life. And she's a kid. I guess my advice to parents is, your kids. My daughter had not found her people the first semester. She spent most of her time in her residence hall around the people who live around her, which is your friends by circumstance, right? They're the ones who are geographically close to you. But as she grew as a student and her interest expanded, she's always been interested in the world and politics and news and events, she was not finding like-minded people. And I encouraged her and finally got her to cross the threshold. And her threshold was student government. Just go to a meeting, just say you're interested. And I find that a lot of times 90% of the battle is getting across the threshold. Our students, like students many places, are a very welcoming group of people. So perhaps suggesting and trying to find a connection to their already existing interests, those are likely to be their people. They may not know it yet, or they may not have met them yet. And the reality of our world is, and I said this very thing to my daughter, the world is not going to come knocking on your door and say, Bella, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. But if you go and knock on the door, 99 times out of 100, you're going to have a receptive audience. So can we get them to the threshold and just stick out their hands and introduce themselves to students who already likely have similar interests is something I would encourage you to think about and have those conversations. And as Dean Harris mentioned, we have 450 student groups. They're on the website. There's everything from, if you like to taste cheese and talk about how cheese is such an amazing thing, there's a cheese club, but of course there are special interest groups and advocacy organizations and service organizations and everything in between.
Yeah, I had heard in a meeting last week that some of our students on average belong to 3 to 4 clubs on top of their major, on top of all of the other things they're doing. So I love that we have, science majors that hang out and do improv. They have a wide variety of interests. So let me ask you, Dave, a hard question, which is, I have a question about a student who may have been in a little bit of trouble and fear around what does that look like when they walk through a CVRP process? Kind of, you don't seem like a scary dean. So tell me a little bit about how to prepare a family or how to prepare a student for when that might happen, because they all have bumps sometimes.
Sure. So when a potential incident occurs, we have a reporting process, and those reports are reviewed by my staff, and we look at what has been reported, the validity or credibility of the report, and then does it implicate a possible violation of our code of conduct? If the answer to that is yes, then we will send the student an initial email letter that says, we've received a report. There's been no finding of fact. That initial communication is not an accusation or a judgment that they are in violation. And there certainly are occasions where at the end of the day, we determine that there doesn't appear to be a violation or there's not enough information to hold a student accountable. But even when we're in that space, our number one guiding, well, there are a few guiding ethics. One is we want the student to be treated with respect. And as much as it's an inherently uncomfortable situation for the student, at least initially, we want them to feel welcome. So to me, it's really important, and we train our various case administrators. We don't dive in and start with the incident. We start with the student, welcoming them, thanking them for being there, even though they may not have chosen that on that particular day and time, and then getting to know them a little bit. And when we do that, we're actually not just listening for information that is pertinent to the thing we're here to talk about, or is a perfunctory act of making the student comfortable. We're actually listening for themes. So I ask questions that are designed to get them to talk, not just to make them comfortable, but to hear. We have an opportunity with the student engaging with us. And as you see today, we have many different departments within the umbrella of student success. And if you look at student affairs overall, extremely strong and varied connections to different resources and people who do different work, but is complementary to what we do. So I'm listening to see if the student, and I've already done, by the way, some background work. What is their GPA? What you can glean coming in the door to see how they're doing overall. Because we may be here to talk about, I don't know, a bulletin board that appears to be torn down. But I have this precious opportunity with a student to see how they're doing overall and to connect them with resources. In terms of how we respond, our focus is educational and restorative. So we changed our name, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, and that was very intentional. We have gone in my career, which in this work spans almost 25 years, from calling ourselves judicial affairs and walking and acting almost like a quasi court of law, to student conduct, which was better, but I still wanted to move away from the focus on conduct and emphasize that we're here to restore, and we're here to emphasize our values and teach students about living in a community with values, their responsibilities and their rights within a community, because that is really what we want them to take with them to the world. And then the restorative piece has an educational focus. So there's a very small sliver of behavior, and I'm talking single digits, where we're really in a space that the main concern is the imminent safety of the community, that this student's presence represents a threat to that safety. 99% of the time, we're not there. And in fact, on the other far end of the spectrum is very predictable stumbles that students might have in managing their newfound freedom, or living among others, or encountering difference and the challenges inherent therein. So we do craft accountability, but it's within the framework of not punishment per se, but what can we do to help this student learn and grow? And if there are deficits in their skills, what can we do to connect them with resources to do that? And then if their acts have impacted defined individuals or the community overall, part of restoration is also to engage the student in reflecting on how their actions impacted others and what, if anything, they can do to repair the harm. And if we have a willing student and a willing person on the other side, we connect them so that things like apologies can happen, or service can happen, or some other form of connection that allows each party to move forward in a positive direction.
Dave, I love when you were talking about kind of the intake conversation. And I think it's important to help families understand, in all of our areas, we really train staff to do that large net, how's it going in your life? Because we're aware they're adults, but we are adults, they're adult light, I try to say, but we might be the only adult they see or they talk to in that moment. And we do want to say, how's sleeping, how's eating, how's friends, how are relationships? And it's a good thing to share that's how we're all trained. So we spend a lot of time. Our intakes are, I think, longer than at many of the universities that I've worked at, because we want to take that time and get them connected in the right ways and right environments. One question I've been thinking about, and you both have college age-ish students, as do I, is I was thinking about the families out there that are finishing up first year of college. And suddenly you've had a student has had all of this independence for the first time, right? They lived all those years in your home, and you were there when they went to bed or did laundry, and now they've had a year away. Maybe we could talk a little bit about advice for that transition back. Sure, they were home for winter break, but what does it look like? Do you re-put the rules back in place? Are you fluid? Kind of, I anticipate that there could be some inherent conflict coming back into a space when, if you wanted pizza for breakfast and you could hang out at 3 a.m., you could do that. What are your thoughts about preparing families for that change that's coming?
I can speak to that in a kind of relevant way. I have a high school age daughter who is actually away at boarding school, and we are already preparing for the summer break, which will be our longest break with her at home since she's been there. And it's been great for her to have that independence. That's really the motivation for her going to boarding school, is she wanted that, and we could see how that would benefit her. But we're having conversations, her father and I, about what are our expectations? What is really important to us? What are the absolute must-have things in terms of keeping our family rhythm going in a positive way that benefits us all? And then what are we able to let go of? Because she is a child who thrives on having a sense of her own agency and control. So it's that balance of figuring out boundaries and freedom, but really communicating first, us understanding what is our priority, and then being able to communicate that with her and have that in a discussion conversation, because she's going to have different perspectives based on what what her schedule is and routine is now, and the new things she's experiencing. And we have to realize that she has grown and changed from, the person that was living in our house, just months ago. So understanding that she's in a different phase of development, but also figuring out what are the boundaries to keep her safe and to keep our family functioning well, and really having that conversation together, I think, is the way we're trying to approach it.
Yeah, I would even think about it before they get there, right? We're aware things have been different. Talk to us about what's been different. What's your sleep schedule? I'm making a meal one time on Friday nights. If you're not at it, that's cool, but then you're doing your own thing. And I always say if you're home for less than 3 days, you're a guest, but longer than that, you're helping. So, yeah, I think that's important. Go ahead, Dave.
I have a road trip this afternoon with my family, not the college age students. So you've given us something to talk about. And I acknowledge perhaps I've been naive and not thinking that is coming soon. It's certainly something we're going to have to navigate. I will say and I hope I can demonstrate what I'm advising. I recognize it's hard to do sometimes. If you can make that a dialogue, I think that would be more successful. As I'm thinking through it myself, while Jenny was speaking, if I can do this, I'm going to try to ask her questions. I think it's fine to acknowledge that you're the parent, and my own father has told me, I don't care how old you are, you're always going to be my son, and I will always worry about you. Now, it's taken different form over the years, and monitoring certainly has changed, but they are physically back in the fold in your house. Yes, it is easy to worry a bit when they're not under your fold, but not be preoccupied by it. But now they are, and so that you will notice their absence. You will notice when they are and are not here, and their habits and so on. So I think to acknowledge that is fine. Call it the elephant in the room. But what do you think the standard should be? I remember when I was a freshman and came home for the first time for the summer, it was a bit stifling in my feeling, because I wasn't used to telling people where I was going and when I was going to be home. But I realized they do worry about me, and I probably need to do that, even though I didn't necessarily like it at the time or enjoy it. But if it could be their idea. So what do you think a reasonable time to come home would be? And what do you think we should expect from you in terms of communication? These days, location tracking is something you need to talk about. Is that something they're okay with? Because they have tools that certainly didn't exist when I was a student. But yes, you're absolutely right that a prospective conversation is really a good idea.
Absolutely. I have periodic ones coming to my house as well. We had an interesting question come in. I'm not sure if it's an incoming student or a student that's currently here, but a student coming from far away. And, maybe they are from the West Coast and they're not used to how things are here, and kind of how do you help with that transition and set up supports? And I think a lot about whether it's a current student or an incoming student, about what has made them successful prior to coming. We know they're all brilliant and wonderful and successful, but what are those things? Was it a white noise machine, or 8 hours of sleep at night, or a therapist, or kickboxing, and kind of talking to them about how to set up the similar things that they used at home that kept them successful when they get here, and the things that are the red flags. What are the things that playing video games all night, or only eating pizza for breakfast, whatever those things are, to kind of help them align. And I think a lot about, like, when a student packs to come to college and they put all their favorite things in the box, and I always say, like, including a heart-shaped picture of their parents, of course, but they forget that they're in the box, that they're the same kid at home as they're going to be here. And so they really need to think about, what did I need? So I don't know if it was necessarily that they're from another part of the country, but to think through, how often do they check in with you? Maybe they're going to want to keep that. But just as we were just talking about with Dave, talking ahead of time about, what are the things you're going to need? How often do you want connection? Sometimes students will say to their parents, we're not going to be talking every day, but we will talk at this time every Sunday. So what do you both think about coming from far away?
I think, I encourage students, regardless of where they're coming from, to really find their own places on campus to kind of create a sense of home where they are. I was talking to a student yesterday who hadn't come from all that far, but was talking about how different Williamsburg is from where they're from, and really being able to explore the area for what it is and find things that you love about it so that it feels like home to you. In a sense, all students are recreating home here, trying to find that place of belonging, the place that feels comfortable to them. And I like what you were saying in terms of bringing the things and the having the schedule and the routine and the things that were comforting and helpful and supportive at home, and thinking about what is it going to look like in a new place, finding spaces where you can find peace and calm, especially if it's new, living with a roommate for the first time that you may not know, and navigating those rhythms, but knowing what the students' personal needs are to have downtime or quiet time or engaged time with others, and really being able to create those environments for themselves, and knowing that it might take some time to figure that out because everything's new. It's a really big transition. But as it was said earlier, this is a really welcoming community. And so I think there is that space to do that, to find your own place, to find your people, to find those connections, and letting students know it may take time to do that, but there are supports along the way to help with that as well.
Yeah, and even for students that are currently here, I think when you get back home, talking about what went really well and what maybe didn't. What do we need to kind of tweak and shift? Maybe this was a great roommate for you, maybe it wasn't.
Mhm.
Maybe we should get you walking around campus more, or getting into therapy. So I think that not the day they get there, but I think, over the course of the summer, checking in, what things do you think you want to add in or take away from the mix? We had a question come in asking about what happens if a student is struggling either academically or maybe emotionally, socially, but they don't really see it. What if you see it as a parent or guardian and you're worried about it, but they're not really feeling like there's an issue? Kind of, how would you come at that?
I'll defer to you, Jenny. This is your day job.
I think we're the right group, right? Because we all also have kids this exact age.
Right.
Mhm.
And I would say, I mentioned care reports earlier. I think care reports are sometimes our initial way of connecting with students who may not come into our offices because they think things are going well, or they may be intimidated or may not know how to connect. But anyone within our community or outside the community can submit a care report online saying, I'm concerned. If you were submitting as a parent, you could say, I'm concerned about my child because they're not getting out of their room, or I feel like they're not attending classes, or they may be depressed. And when we receive that care report in Care Support Services, it is assigned to someone within the Dean of Students office who will follow up with that student. So they will reach out in a very caring, supportive way to let them know, hey, there's someone that's concerned about you, and we would love to meet with you and talk about resources, to talk about how you feel you're doing, to figure out the supports you have currently, and to see if there are other things that we might do to help you. Now, it's always up to that student to engage in those supports or not, but we want to let them know that they are available here and to point them in directions they may not know about. The fact that we do have academic well-being that offers free tutoring and one-on-one academic coaching, that we have student accessibility services if they've had accommodations in the past, or maybe they haven't, but they have a new diagnosis and have the documentation that would help them to have more support within the classroom academic setting. We can connect them to the wellness center, whether it's to the student health center or to counseling resources, or just to the wellness classes and things that are going on that students may not be aware that there are other opportunities, and just starting that conversation with them and giving them people or offices that they can connect with to know that there's a support network here that's here to help you really thrive and do your best and figure out what is the best for you. It's going to look different for each student, because I think sometimes we do have parents that worry about students when the students are doing okay and they're finding their way. And maybe it takes a little bit longer because it is a transition to learn how to how to function in an academic setting and manage their own schedule. And but we are working with them to help them find their agency and skills to be independent and to really navigate that on their own with the support of those that care about them, with the support of this community.
Yeah, and academically, if they do struggle, there are supports that are put into place where there will be, followed by people within academic well-being to help kind of get them back on track. Sorry, Dave, I cut you off there.
No worries. No worries.
What were you going to add in?
A couple of thoughts, because as a parent, again, of a freshman, and my daughter has, full disclosure, has ADHD. So on her best day, she's not firing on all cylinders equally. And we expected that this journey would have some bumps and maybe some detours. She's doing well, all things considered. We're happy, but I think a couple things I've learned and reflected on is, I would call failure. There are two forms of failure. There's little f failure at lowercase f, and there's capital letter failure, maybe even failure with all capital letters. A little bit of failure, a little bit of setback, actually can be a really great developmental experience for students. Encountering challenging circumstances, using judgment and realizing that judgment didn't work out is a great form of experiential learning. Encountering an uncomfortable situation and navigating that discomfort and getting through it and beyond it actually really helps them build their resilience when they go out in the world and they work in workplace. The other thing I have learned, especially in my student conduct work, is at the end of the day, it's their journey. And no matter what we do to identify concerns, to try to engage their brains and thinking through and alternatives and so on, at the end of the day, if we are with a student who's not ready for that conversation, you can try to push that rock as hard as you want, but that rock is not going to move very far or at all. And sometimes they have to go out there and experience their own learning opportunities. Again, if you feel like it's going to be a capital F failure, or certainly all capital letters, that is when we want to know. But the little bumps and bruises of life are predictable and can really lead to learning. And the other thing I learned with my daughter by trial and error is, I would recommend you suggest one change at a time. I have found that there have been multiple times this year that I have counseled my daughter as to things she could do to change. And when I realize I start giving her more than one thing, she becomes overloaded and shuts down. So a strategy I'm trying with her right now is, what's one thing you can do this week? It can be a little thing to get out of your residence hall. What's one thing you can do this week to attend to your well-being? Maybe we can agree you'll try that, and I'm going to ask you about it at the end of the week. Is that okay? And knowing that there may be 5 things I think she could work on, if I ask her to do all 5, that will not be productive or successful.
I think those are such good pieces of advice, Dave, and so important. And I really liked your comment about discomfort, because part of our job in student affairs is to help students become employable. And as you all know, in the work world, there are going to be bumps and people you really like and people you don't, and projects that go your way and projects that don't. And we need to help them kind of build that grit so they can sit with discomfort and work in teams and live in community and be good partners and spouses and parents and colleagues. So that is part of this time. And our desire as parents to keep them from discomfort sometimes gets in the way of helping with that growth. It's kind of counterintuitive at times, but really, really important point. Dave, we've had some questions about SAS, Student Accessibility Services, and
Great.
How it's gone through some change and is going through some change. And wondering if you could speak a little bit about kind of where your vision for the future is now that we're in the middle of this job search looking for someone new to take over.
Great question, an exciting one for me. So I have been working intensely with their staff. I've been working with their staff for some time, but intensely, I would say, meaning multiple hours per week for the last several months. And it's been a great time to evaluate their approach, their practices with students, and so on. So some broad themes that we're working on and towards include making the office a more welcoming and environment for our students. We heard, and I respond very much to the feeling among some students that it sometimes felt like it was a little bit more transactional than we want it to be. And we want SAS to be a place and a staff that our students see as their space and their people, meaning that our staff is there to know them, to where appropriate advocate for them, but certainly to help them develop, just like the developmental work we were talking about a few minutes ago. The staff is student development specialists first, who happen to have a specialty in student accessibility work and that area of the law and practice. And so that's one theme. We have definitely been working very intensely on our time for responsiveness, recognize that was not where we wanted it to be. The good news is I think we've made vast improvements and set the foundation for that to continue to be improved in terms of responsiveness, response time for emails, answering phone calls, returning calls, and so on, and getting appointments. And then just really more flexible approach. And then with the director, we really are looking forward to having that position filled, because the director, more than anyone else in that office, will be the outward facing professional to engage with faculty, staff, units like facilities and residence life, to do the education and awareness, but also troubleshooting for our students, either on an individual basis, but just as importantly on a global basis, to work with our ADA coordinator to make sure that our whole community is aware of issues affecting students with disabilities. And in fact, issues that affect our students with disabilities often affect students across the board. So when we talk to faculty, for example, about how to make their class more accessible, they're actually benefiting students who don't have a defined disability or don't meet that criteria. So we expect that the director is going to be doing much more programming and outreach and training with those external constituencies, and developing their staff to be the providers of this kind of support and environment that we're trying to establish. Our students also expressed really persuasively that they missed a sense of community, and they wanted opportunities for them to know each other and to help each other. So we are talking about some really exciting initiatives. It was mentioned by Jenny that we did a carnival, which was our first social event for students that gave them the chance to come in, eat some great food, meet us, play some games. In fact, we had a rock painting activity that turned out to be the most attractive to them. They were really excited about painting rocks and just sitting with each other and being with each other. My vision is that become a student-led endeavor in the future, that we have a group of students that we work collaboratively with, who can tell us what they want. We can support those ideas and give them the support they need, both in terms of administrative support and perhaps funding to carry out their vision as a partner. We're also going to create a student advisory group and a faculty advisory group moving forward. We hope that'll be a sounding board for us to continue to improve and continue to identify issues and concerns, either emanating from that office or just on a macro level at the institutional level, so we can bring those to the appropriate parties for awareness and addressing concerns.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. And I'm so glad you said the thing about rock painting, because we had a separate question about what happens with introverts who are having trouble connecting. And I do think we're going to do a lot more just kind of board game nights. And I know some of the events we have, I went to a dance performance last night that was so loud with 300 students in the room, but we do have more quiet events and events outside and walking. And I do think we're going to have kind of hang out and do homework together, or Jenga and board game night. So I'm happy to see all of those things taking place.
If I could just flag for any parents whose students may be registered with us, we're actually planning and are likely to have it happen during the exam reading period. We're going to have a coffee shop in the student accessibility suite. I don't even think Dean Harris knows about this yet, that our students will help us lead, and it'll be a place that they can come study together, have a cup of coffee, tea, whatever. And if they want to come for 5 minutes, they can, or if they want to hunker down for a few hours and study in groups or just around other people, we'll have the whole facility open for that purpose. So we're really excited about
Love that. I
Yeah.
didn't know. That's fantastic.
Not a chance to tell you yet.
Woohoo. I will be there for my coffee. So I know our time is tight. We got a question that it comes up often. And so Jenny, I'm hoping you can help us with this. Students sometimes use the phrase care reported. What happens if I am care reported? And feel free to jump in on that. I'll start by saying putting in a care report is not getting someone in trouble. No one has ever care reported. Reports are put in because there is concern and worry, and we want to add care and support. So I wonder if you could take away with that for me.
Yeah, I like that framing of it. I think that's the first thing, we communicate when we reach out, at least I do, is that someone has submitted this because they care about you, and we are following up to offer support, because we want you to know that if you're dealing with a difficult circumstance, you don't have to do that alone. This is, not a way to get in trouble. I think the word report scares our students because they are so responsible and concerned about, their record and how well they're doing. But it's an opportunity to really connect and find out what the resources are on campus. We really see it as a way for us to make sure that students aren't, overlooked in struggles they might have, and for them not to feel alone in that. And, for me, as I mentioned, being an undergrad here, I often felt like I was the only one struggling. And so I really want to communicate that to students, that we all have those moments where we're dealing with challenges, when things may feel overwhelming. And it's okay to be able to share that. In fact, that's the way we find out we're not alone in that, and that there are supports, and that even when, we're going through something that feels like failure, as Dean Gilbert was talking about, that's a time of growth and learning and opportunity. And we want students to know that there are always options, and that we will help them work through that, figure out what they can learn from that, and figure out how to connect them to what they need. So really see it as a positive thing, that our community really cares about each other and wants to make sure that students have what they need.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So before we shut it down, I'm going to ask each of you, and I will do it as well, if you could think of kind of one nugget of advice that we could leave with our families. And I'm going to start by saying, I said it a little bit earlier, we are all very connected, faculty and staff here. Truly help your student get to one of us, and we will make sure to get them to the right person. That would be my piece. Dave, you want to throw a piece of advice out?
Oh gosh, I feel like I have given a whole bunch. I guess I will just reinforce something I'm trying to learn as a parent, and that just reinforce that at the end of the day, this is their journey. And as parents, it's a balancing act between being there to be the advisor and the caregiver that you've always been, but recognize they're now adults. And in fact, even if we wanted to monitor them, I call it the angel on their shoulder. If we wanted to be that and in real time say, oh, that doesn't look like a good idea, maybe you shouldn't do that. We can't. So have faith that you have raised them well. That does not mean they will be perfect, and that there won't be some bumps along the way, but those bumps are also opportunities. And I promise you, at the end of 4 years, they're going to be where we want them and need them to be. And part of that is also helping them develop a sense of competence and confidence. So when they're telling you that they are trepidatious about something, find, if you can, an opportunity to reflect to them on all the times they have encountered something difficult, and they have prevailed. They have learned and grown. It may not have gone perfectly, and if it didn't, that's great to point out too. But I tell my kids, everything you ever encountered that is easy in your life was hard before you knew how to do it, including getting the spoon to your mouth when you were learning how to feed yourself. So we take for granted as humans all of the times that we have struggled, but we have prevailed or persevered, if you will, and they can do that with most of the situations they encounter, and we're here to help them do that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Jenny, close us out.
That he took mine, but I will add on to that. I think you can be assured that this is a really caring, supportive community that really cares about our students, your children, and about parents and families too. And I think even when we are not always able to communicate the work we're doing with your students because we are treating them as adults. We are giving them that autonomy and their own privacy where we are able to do that. Please know that we are working very closely with them. The gift of William and Mary is it is a very caring, high-touch community where we are all connected and very collaborative in our work with students, and really do it from a place of care and compassion, and really helping them to find their strengths and to be equipped and empowered to use them to succeed.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy to work with both of you. So thank you all for being here and your wonderful questions. And we hope to see you at many events in the future. And our emails are in the chat. If you have questions, please let us know. And for that, have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.